So we went to Surfrider and said, well, what could we do to protect the local waters? And they had this thing called the Blue Water Task Force. It was perfect. And I said, oh, good, could I do Circle Beach? They said, yes. Would you mind also doing Havens Beach, Long Beach, and Big Fresh and Little Fresh ponds? Oh, no, sure. So that's how we started doing the water testing.
Should I go first? Okay. We live out here in Noyack, which is on the outskirts of Sag Harbor. Our commitment to the environment grew dramatically over the last decade. We got involved with Surfrider several years back when we heard a lecture about the Army Corps of Engineers projects building seawalls along the eastern coast. And there were some very graphic photographs of how the seawalls really didn't work and looked terrible. That led us to get involved with the Army Corps of Engineers project out in Montauk. Heidi and I were among 16 people who were arrested, standing in front of the construction equipment, trying to get a pause to get a full environmental statement done, which wasn't what we predicted actually has happened, which is to say a bad storm comes in and the sand gets blown away and the 14,000 geotech bags are exposed and really look terrible. And they have to spend about $1 million every time to put the sand back.
This was the first place I felt at home when we came out here. Dan and I said, I don't care where I live as long as it's near here. As a matter of fact, I started testing because our grandson, at the time we just had one, was going to come and visit, and I wanted to make sure that he was going to go into clean water. At the time, Tom and I were keyboard warriors for Standing Rock, and when Standing Rock fell apart, they said, take that 7th fire to where you live and take care of your local waters. I guess this is where we stop. I never know when to stop. It says Circle Beach 2, because Circle Beach 1 is the main beach we'll do on the way back. Estuary, T&H, Tom and Heidi, March 22nd, 21. I'm gonna go do some testing now. Or more properly, sample taking. I don't want to get out. Oh, that's right. They close it off, right? Yeah. In the summers, they close off the area because this is a plover, piping plover nesting grounds. So if you walk, you have to walk really close to the beach or way over on the other side, or they'll go crazy because they have their eggs there and stuff. I'll start pretty soon. They close it off pretty soon. I forgot about that. Now it's filled with water and clean water. It's usually pretty clean in the winter. 45.
Water temperature.
Okay, cool. At 9?
10 o'clock.
At 10, okay. I'm Heidi Rain. I'm Tom Oleszczuk's wife, and all right, we can do it.
What? Do what?
Take our masks off.
Yeah.
Colin's more than 6 feet away from us, so we're good. It's magnificent out here in terms of nature.
It's wonderful. That's one of the joys of what we do, the water testing.
Yeah.
You know, we get out regularly, and it's before the crowds. You know, Monday morning, people are either going back to work or they're sleeping in, and the weather has been very, very cooperative. We rarely do it in the rain, and once we did it after it had snowed.
Right.
But sometimes it's
fun.
very cold.
Yeah, and if it's cold and wind, I mean, forget it.
Yeah.
I can't decide whether that's worse or the rain is worse, but most of the time it's just heavenly.
Yeah.
We're starting our 5th year now this summer.
Yes. The tests are for Enterococcus, which is a bacteria that lives inside everyone in their guts, but doesn't belong in the water. And it gets into the water mostly through septic systems and through I guess there's some dogs and such along the beach.
There were 2 sites that were being tested at Little Fresh, and on one site, the fecal matter was high in both of them. One of them was human fecal matter from septic systems, and the other side was from geese.
Oh, that's right.
Which you always see on the pond. So
Yes.
It's really interesting. There's slight variations.
When we do our testing, we visit 6 different beaches. Heidi takes the sample, and I do the measurement of the water temperature and the wind speed. And when we do our water testing, we go out to our knees so that we get a more accurate reading of the water temperature. Because in shallow water, the sun heats up the water much more rapidly. Well, you don't have the cooling effect of the ocean, and also the fact that the waters here don't circulate as much and don't dissipate the heat as much. But it's this is a beautiful location, and this particular pond almost always gets a clean bill of health during our water testing. Oh, you want to do a selfie of us?
Yeah,
okay.
Big fish.
And as you can see, it's almost, now we're getting a little bit of a breeze. The wind pushing across the top of the water stirs it up. And obviously the stronger it is, the more you have waves, and the more likely the Enterococcus will be brought up from below. So that has to be taken into account when the actual chemical tests are done on our water samples. And then this is our water temperature gauge, and it was 48. It's now warming up to 50 because it's out in the air, and the air is warmer. So, and then we go back to the car, and the sample goes into a little freezer case because if it gets warmed up, that changes the readings. Our measurements we write down on a form and that we hand over with the samples. Someone from Surfrider does the actual technical testing. Usually a day or 2 later, the results for not just our 6 sites, but about 40, I think. There are about 40 sites the Eastern Long Island chapter tests.
So my name is Pete Topping. I'm the Executive Director and Baykeeper at Peconic Baykeeper. And we have been partnering with Surfrider Eastern Long Island in the Blue Water Task Force Water Quality Monitoring. I believe this is our 4th or 5th year. And with COVID, what happened was we were processing our samples at Stony Brook Southampton College. And then due to lab restrictions because of health concerns, we got shut out of there. And Peconic Baykeeper, we have this great office space, so we were able to work it out with Surfrider, and they were able to fund the equipment needed to process all the samples. And now we house this lab right in our office here. And then the other great thing is, in addition to the regular monitoring program, we also have the access to test any other samples essentially at any time. So if a homeowner or someone proposes a site that they say they're really concerned about, either Peconic Baykeeper or Surfrider could go and collect a sample, and we can process that right here. This is our morning's work here, which is, it's truly a group effort. probably about half a dozen people involved in collecting all these samples from different places. And what we do is we will take one of these beaches, or one of these sites. So this one is Windmill Beach in Sag Harbor. Some of it's sort of shorthand, but we know where all the sites are by now. And then what we do is we have a distilled water right here, and I kind of have just a measuring jar right here. And what we do is we dilute that sample, take 10 milliliters of that sample, and then we add 90 milliliters of distilled water. So essentially, because we're dealing with bacteria, which can have really high numbers, we're diluting that, and then our end result we just multiply by 10. So what I'll do is I'll take 90 milliliters of distilled water. This bag is sealed up right now, so it's perfectly sterile. I always want to make sure I use hand sanitizer and wash my hands before I do any of this actual processing. I'll add 90 milliliters of water to that. Then I will take 10 milliliters. I'll mix the sample kind of like that, and then open it up really carefully. Try not to touch the top of it. And I will take my pipette. We have to use a sterile pipette for each one of these samples. So I'll draw out 10 milliliters. I'll add it to the bag. And then IDEX, which is the laboratory company, has a special product. It's called EnterAlert, and it tests for Enterococcus bacteria. And so what I do is I add this reagent, and it's already pre-measured. I add it to the sample, wait for it to dissolve, and then once it's dissolved, I put it in one of these trays. Okay, so I'll open that tray up, pour it in, and you can see there are all these cells, which they refer to as wells. And then system right here, where this tray fits perfectly into this feeder right here. And I would turn this on, turn this machine on, run this through, and this is called a Quanti tray sealer. And what it does is it seals up. It's kind of like a laminator for these trays. It seals it up so nothing can get in it. And then I will bring them over to this incubator right here and put them in there, and then they have to sit for 24 hours in that incubator before we can read them. So it's kind of like a 2-day sort of process. So this says Hampton Bays, Old Ponquag Bridge, Marine Park, 3/26/19. So this one's pretty old. We just sometimes save these to bring to events. And then when these are ready, this is still gonna work. All right, so the way we read these samples, that reagent in those little packs that you add to each sample, what it does is if there is Enterococcus bacteria in the sample, it metabolizes that reagent, and that whole process causes it to glow under UV light. So if it's totally a clean sample, you won't see anything glowing. If it's fairly contaminated, as this sample appears to be, keep in mind that this has been sitting for 2 years, so it's by no means accurate at this point. So these samples will glow, and it's important that the incubation temperature is right at about 41 degrees Celsius, and also the timing is 24, I believe, to 26 hours. And then the last step is I count the number of large wells or cells, and the small ones. And then we have a chart where we can cross-reference. So large wells, small wells, positive means they're glowing, and that's going to give me a number. So if I had 13 small wells and 6 large wells, my number would be 20.3. And because I only took 10% of that sample, I'd multiply it, and that would give me a count of 203. So that gives us like a real number, and that's essentially the way the Suffolk County Department of Health Services does exactly the same thing. The only difference is they have a actual certified lab, but this gives us data that then we can contact one of those authorized agencies and work with them to make sure people are aware of the risk.
So just doing this, we're hoping more people will do it, and please do it. Help us.
Yeah.
Help us change this world so that we can really care about each other and about what's happening around us. That's important.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure. Who would give this up? I mean, I wouldn't want to not have a week to do this in the summer. You know, it's really, it's a pleasure. I love that we're trying to support the environment and let people know what's happening. It's more of an educational thing, like, hey, look at what's around you. Let's fix this. Let's stop polluting this.
You know, we're planning on staying with Surfrider and the Blue Water Task Force for as far as the eye can see.